Oh, gee. Okay. 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 We coffeeed up enough. We have three charts to do now, and as we often say, these charts are not for the three of you that are picked. They're for all of us. They're learning tools to see how what we've talked about in the first part can be brought down to the individual level. And that's really what we're looking at. Now, if you get something good out of it, if you're selected and get something juicy, even better, we're thrilled. But this gives you a little flavor, a little taste of what goes on in an individual client session. Both Jeff and I do that kind of work separately. If you're interested in that, you can contact either one of us, either online here or just by thinking about us. We'll call you back. If we pick your chart, I'll say your name. Please, jump up on the table, stand up, wave your arms around, something so we can see who it is that we're talking to and about. And away we go.
All right. So, Karina. Hi, Karina. Welcome.
Karina.
All right. Well, happy almost birthday. One of the first things I noticed in looking at this chart, of course, was the very close trine, the blue line indicating a harmonious angle between the moon in fiery Sagittarius and the sun in fiery Leo.
Good genetic juju.
Yeah, that's good in a weird social setting, but we'll get to that in a moment. No, when the sun and the moon, which are sometimes called the lights, represent the two most dominant forces in a chart. And to have them in a harmonious relationship with one another is considered to be a very desirable thing. It's suggesting that the Leo desire to create and express is supported by the adventurousness of a moon in Sagittarius.
And when I see a chart like this, I'm always intrigued. It's almost as if the universe said, hold on, now. Because you were born, the moon, the sun had just moved into Leo that day. The moon had just moved into fiery Sagittarius that 10 minutes. I mean, it's like just a few, and it was like everything was ready, but somehow the fetus, kind of like this blind surfer waiting for the right wave, is saying, wait, this is it, whoosh. And so it's very interesting, not just that the moon is so closely trying to the sun, and as Jeff said, because they're lights, that makes it even more important. They're in a special class of their own. But the fact that they had both just changed signs. I mean, if you had been born a half a day prior, you would have been a Cancer with a Scorpio moon. How different could that have been? You would have been an alien compared to who you are now. Granted, you're an alien now compared to what you might have been, but it's just like a huge difference in that moment and 5-6 hours doesn't always make that huge a difference. But in your case, it does, and that says something about you and your life and the timing in your life in general.
Yeah, one of the other things that struck me is the contrast between the ebullience and buoyancy of that fiery trine and some other much more complex things. It's almost like I came into this world, there we go, the blind surfer again. I came into this world expecting all of these amazing things. And shit, it's a pain in the ass. People don't want to play at the level I play. First of all, you have Scorpio rising. And Scorpio risings tend to look at the world suspiciously. Whereas you would think a Leo with a Sagittarius moon could enjoy the freedom of naivete and get by, luckily, in a world in which the wind always seemed to be at their back. But no, not only did you have Scorpio rising, but you have Saturn at a square or right angle to Venus. Oh, love, relationship, I'm friendly. I have Venus in Gemini. I'll talk with anybody. I'll sleep with most people. No, just kidding. But no, that's where Saturn comes in. All right. With doctor's notes. All right. But there we have this Saturn square Venus, which is, there's a part of me, and I was kidding erotically, but maybe, but there's a part, there's an availability to playful, friendly Venus, which tends to be a little flirtatious in the 8th house of deep sharing, but Saturn square that says, oh my God, you know that kind of friendly person that you were talking to and it all seemed so nice. And then you woke up the next morning and saw the wanted poster next to the bed, or you looked in the medicine cabinet. So it's again the contrast between this optimistic core and the social realities of what's out there.
And there's a way to get past Karina's Saturn, I think, and that is to go to Pluto. Now, and what I mean by this is that, again, we go back to what you said about the Scorpio rising, that as close an aspect as the sun to the moon, you have Venus opposing Neptune as close as it gets, except in my chart where it's actually closer. And so I know about this Venus-Neptune opposition, and it's a love affair with ideal perfection that can't manifest in this world. It's the attraction to beauty in its idealized state, and I think that's where Saturn comes in. And I think you nailed it. It's always the disappointment of
Not
the
always.
real. Well, nearly always. It's the disappointment of what's real compared
the
to
dream.
what you can do in your imagination and in your dreams. There's a very strong fantasy and very strong dream life here. But the way around, or the way through that Saturn, is when someone shows up real and is willing to go deep, is willing to go to an intense place that engages that Saturn but doesn't get scared off or stopped by it. Because, you see, this opposition has the square to Saturn, but it has the trine and the sextile to Pluto. And so that going deep is the way to go around the fear or the rules that you have built upon, perhaps, your fears. Food for thought.
So the question is, psychotherapy, romance. We're going to go deep here, or are we just going to have fun here? And I encourage you to have lots of fun, actually. Your North Node, the point of growth or integration, is in Leo at the top of your chart. If you don't like the world that you're in, I encourage you to create your own world. That trying to understand us and adapt to us is probably a less rewarding and viable path than creating your own reality. And that may mean being creative in your work, creative in your outlook, not following other people's rules, all that kind of stuff. And Saturn, later this year, will come to your ascendant. And so that's like you're very pregnant with whatever's coming next. And hopefully what's coming next with Saturn going over the ascendant is more authority in terms of fending off what you don't want and building and claiming what you desire.
And I think that there's recently been a bit of upheaval and transformation with Pluto. To Mars. With Uranus moving opposite to Mars and Pluto moving square to it. It's kind of done, but it's still in the neighborhood, and it still has over the next year or so. And here we have that Mercury in Cancer that we talked about earlier, and it's a stationary Mercury. Do you know if it's stationary, retrograde, or direct? Do you know? I can tell you here in a second. It's stationary direct, meaning that you were born on the last day of a Mercury retrograde, which again is like those planets at 0 degrees of fire. There's a lot of your chart is about anticipation of what's going to happen. Even, in that Mercury in Cancer, there's a part of you that's very cautious and very careful in what you say and how you interpret things. But there's that eagerness or the anticipation for something that has yet to unfold.
Okay. Thank you, Karina. All right. Whose life do we ruin next? Mary.
Mary, quite.
Hi, Mary.
Where's Mary?
She's not contrary. Oh, look at that sun-moon conjunction in Cancer
That's
square
that's
Neptune.
today's new moon.
Yeah. Pretty close.
It's interesting. We've had 2 charts now with a very powerful sun-moon combo.
Right.
And this sun-moon combo is square to Neptune.
And sextile Mars. Now, what that means is a square, right angle with dissolving Neptune, is about illusion, confusion, and hopefully inspiration. And what that often means is reality, it's hard to get a grip on reality, yet Mars, the planet of muscles, is in earthy, realistic Virgo and harmonized with the sun and moon. So I think you've got a really good capacity to visualize things which are beyond, ordinary reality, and then actually do the work to make at least some of it real.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is like it's like a sheep in wolf's clothing. Isn't that backwards from it normally? Isn't the saying a wolf in sheep's clothing? Yeah. Well, because there's a Sagittarius rising, and I think that you can act, I don't want to say tougher, but you act fiery and more involved than sometimes you actually feel. Because even all of this Leo stuff is still, it's all 8th house stuff. There's like a sense of control. This is Saturn and Pluto. Pluto, in the 8th house too, and Pluto lined up with Venus. There's a lot of tightness around that Leo energy. There's tightness here around the sun, about the moon coming into the sun, because this is a chart 2 hours prior to the new moon. So it's before the new moon. It's not growing. It's ending the previous cycle. And yet all this holding back stuff, even the uncertainty of the sun and moon here to the square to Neptune, and yet that Sagittarius rising, which is getting all this fire from Leo, there's that sense of when you present yourself, when you need to be on stage, when you need to be on show, you can turn it on, I'm thinking, and yet then you need to go find the blanket, and the cup of tea and pull it up over your head and go, I just want to be alone.
Yeah, it's I think
Notice that wasn't a yeah, that was a yeah.
Well, it's Neptunian and Cancerian, but Rick made a good point. This is an old moon. It's not a new moon. And the old moon is really referential a bit more to the past. The gift of being an old moon or an old phase of anything is wisdom. And the weakness of it is feeling faded. That there's so much momentum been built up in the past that it's hard to overcome it. And sometimes I look at this chart and I think it's like somebody who's dreaming about some faraway place in the past that never actually existed. But you still can be nostalgic for it. There's sort of this hunger or the desire for something that may or may not have been quite real.
And that I think is corroborated by the Saturn in Cancer, which also holds on to the past or to those, holds feelings close to the vest, if you will.
Now, shut up. Well, Saturn, Mercury means shut up. Mercury's communication. Saturn is boundaries and limits. Saturn to Mercury says, unless you're absolutely right, then we don't want to hear it. It's not an invitation to speak.
Yeah, I think that this is some early training of people, parents, someone telling you that you're not smart enough, or that there's something here about having to being sent back to the drawing board until you get it right. And maybe even having to overcome that by really learning more than other people about something so that you're an expert. It's the fear of not knowing what you actually know, or thinking that you don't know what you
or that you're not going to be heard. But the positive side is to build an emotionally connected foundation with somebody who you can then, that would be Saturn in Cancer, who you can then inspire with the creative Mercury in Leo.
And I would think that from a timing standpoint here, that, there's a lot going on. The Uranus and Pluto have recently squared and opposed your new moon, and opposed and squared your Neptune, but they're both coming into still Uranus at the very bottom of your chart, opposite your midheaven, and Pluto coming into squaring it. There's a lot of deconstruction and transformation and change, some of which may not have been expected, that I think is still unfolding and still in process. Does that make sense to you a little bit? Yeah, and I don't think there's any way you can rush it. I think you've been through the core of it. Now it's a matter of allowing it to play on through in appearances and at home and in your life. But I think that whatever it is that's already gone down is the seed of the transformation and change, because both the sun and the moon were both affected by the square and opposition.
Right, and the grand trine
Ooh,
Jupiter
yeah.
falls on your moon and sun. Saturn trines it. Neptune trines it. Because your sun and moon are in the seventh house of others, then there may be inspiration or wisdom or encouragement or vision that is either developed with someone or who comes from someone else that really gives you a big framework of meaning and understanding for the changes Rick was talking
Yeah,
about.
I would say be careful about being, and here's where Jeff and I differ, as I said this. I would say be careful about assuming that everything that you think is going to work out now will actually work out.
No, she
But-
doesn't think that way.
But don't let that get in the way of actually taking the opportunities that may present to you over the next weeks. I think there is caution with the Saturn. You know, I mean,
I'm saying a Mercury-Saturn conjunction and a Venus-Pluto conjunction adds a lot of caution intrinsically.
right. And so here I think, though, that with Jupiter and Mars together, joining your sun and your moon as they're making this grand trine is a very special moment, and that it is a time to, be clear about your intent and to take your dreams and to put intentions around them to give yourself something to build on. No, I just meant with all of them in Cancer.
Well, that was Mercury-Saturn.
That was Mercury, Saturn. Saturn holds back. Mercury talks, Saturn holds back. So Saturn on a Mercury is not Jeff telling you to shut up. It's the sense of that is holding back communication in some ways until you have authority, or bumping into authority that says this isn't the time to speak your piece.
Right, and I didn't mean that you should shut up, but it's just that a Mercury-Saturn hard aspect often gets that either direct or indirect message. In a way, it connects. The communicator Mercury rules Gemini, the sign of your north node of growth. Your south node's in Sagittarius, which means you have more to say than maybe we can take in. And so rather than being shut up, it means narrow it down, focus on what can be digested and taken in by this person under these circumstances. Okay,
Good job.
good. Well, we'll stop there because while we can. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And now we have Rosemary.
What did you bring your clack with you? Your posse? They applauded you. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. A Leo.
A Leo with the sun fairly close to Uranus, so it's a kind of a crazy Leo.
Well, the moon is in Aquarius.
The moon is in Aquarius. Jupiter is square the sun. North node conjunct the ascendant. I don't know if you ever heard this, Jeff, but I once had an astrologer, make a case for people with North node on their ascendant are people for whom happiness is like really, I don't want to say important. Happiness is important to everyone, but it's almost like it's the driving force of their life.
Interesting.
Not that they are happy, but everything is like, will this make me happy? And I don't know if it's true or not, but I just recall I don't see the North Node on the ascendant that often, and it made me think of this person.
Well, that's a nice idea. It's your job to be happy. Well, but it does raise a point to stick with the nodes. The South Node, the path of least resistance, an old pattern we tend to stay in and spin our wheels, is in Aries in the 7th, or close to the point of
Close
others.
enough.
Which means battling others or feeling like other people have to take the initiative. And a North Node conjunct the ascendant says, maybe it does mean make yourself happy. That the power to create peace and harmony in a relationship that works for you is really the relationship you have with yourself. Now, you have Jupiter square the sun, which I think is harder than Saturn square the sun. Because Saturn, the planet of limits, square the sun may impose pressure and be diminishing in certain ways, but at least it sets clear boundaries. Jupiter square the sun says, you should be more. Well, but I've done, tell me, be more what? All right, I'll go and do it. That's great. Be more. That the planet of expansion, Jupiter, in a right angle to the sun of will and consciousness, can represent that drive or that pressure to keep growing, to be more. And obviously the idea is to keep growing, but not get crazy and neurotic about it, just to enjoy the process.
Even though the sun is widely conjunct Uranus and there's an Aquarius moon, and I opened up with something about crazy, I think that Rosemary is probably has a greater tendency to be neurotic than crazy. Now, I'm not saying that you're neurotic. I'm just saying that you have a Venus-Mars conjunction, which is very creative, but it's hidden, so to speak, in the 12th house. It's hard for it to find its way to be seen. It's in Virgo, Venus is retrograde, and it's very closely quincunx. That's this green line. It's an aspect of adjustment. It's hard for it to find its place. There's that sense that the erratic, the moon's opposition to the Leo stuff, that there's a part of you that finds yourself, I think, in situations that are either unstable or crazy making. But I don't think you're the crazy one. I think you do a real good job of projecting it so that everyone around you is crazy, but it makes you neurotic.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this Venus, Mars, and Virgo in the 12th is very helpful and useful for teaching people crafts in the institution. It's well, because the 12th house is institutions. Venus and Mars, which are sociable, are in Virgo, which is practical. And I agree with Rick. I think you're growing up environment, whether it was physically unstable or emotionally uncertain, that a lot of your core motivation is to keep things calm, which is what Libra risings do, because otherwise, Moon, Uranus, Sun, there's some blow up or some explosion or some sense of separation, probably in, with parents. Yeah.
What time of day were you born? 4:11. Well, that's where you probably are.
Oh, never mind. Everything we said is 5 hours wrong. All right.
Hold on.
Never mind. Now, here are the things that will... a partial do-over.
Not completely. Not completely.
Thank you for getting that. Okay. All right. So... yeah, well, that Moon-Uranus opposition is still going to be in effect.
It's still there, and it's even closer to the relationship
horizon,
point.
Which makes it important.
So you've just moved from neurotic to crazy.
All right, so now we have Leo rising. This is a very interesting thing because here's the moon, which is emotionally responsive. It's close to the partnership point, which is responding to others. It is in Aquarius, which is friendly but cool. And then you have Uranus, the planet of independence rising. So you have some tolerance for the craziness of others, but not a whole lot. I mean, it's like, all right, I expect other people to be weird and different, so I'll be entertaining. I can tell them good stories. I can be entertaining. But once they stop being entertaining, maybe I need to get out of there. So, from an advice point of view, certainly I think it's important to let other people be crazy as long as it doesn't get in your way. Or let other people be different or have values that are different than yours, which, of course, Venus and Mars in Virgo doesn't do all that well.
Not all that
Now
way at
listen,
all.
I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but I've found that if you buy this brand at this price in this store, here, let me show you. I have some here in my closet because I went through this. I researched the same problem. It's that very helpful and detail-oriented aspect of Venus and Mars in Virgo, which can engage you in a very specific way or engage other people in, yeah, this is the right way to do things.
And I would take what Jeff said a step further and say that being crazier is a good cure for whatever lingering neurotic patterns that you still might have in your life. Be crazy. I mean, it's the Uranus on the ascendant. You know,
Well, be different.
be different, be unique. That combined with the Aquarius moon, there's a sense here of that your fear of being different or of not fitting in is what makes you neurotic. Meaning that, and I'm not saying that you're neurotic.
I've never really cared. I mean, I always fit in.
Well, then that's perfect because the sun lined up with Uranus on the ascendant basically says it's not valuable for you to worry about whether or not who you are or what you do fits into the social norm. You need to basically be yourself and do what it is that you do. It will work.
But I also think you can do it in such a seamless way.
Why do you say that?
Well, several reasons. The North Node in Libra, the grace of Venus and Mars in Virgo. I think that allows you to be unique in a way that doesn't necessarily provoke this sense of, oh, you're really a freaking weird person. You can get away with it. You know, I think you are different.
So I could be weird?
I think you are. In the sense of being different, being apart in a way. But, I mean, if we can't talk you into it in 3 minutes, then I guess we better respect your lifetime of experience. But we'll do our
and
best.
there is one thing here that I think is, I mean, the Earth part of this chart, even though it presents with the Leo material up front, is that Saturn is trine to Pluto in Earth signs with the Venus retrograde lined up with Mars also in Earth signs. And this is the part of you that does ultimately, even if you're crazy, even if you're eccentric, you do what works. You know, it's like if it doesn't work, if it's not gonna last, if it's not gonna make sense in your life, then I think that it's hard for you to justify to yourself doing something.
Well, and in terms of current and upcoming events, transiting Saturn is hanging out on your Neptune, the planet of dreams, which is the end of old illusions, or the commitment to workable dreams. And the grand trine that comes up later this month will be organized around that Neptune of yours, and then Saturn later in the year will hit your moon, hit your Mercury. I mean, that's one thing, you're really open. You collect maybe more information than is easy to process. That's a moon-Mercury opposition, and transiting Saturn coming back to a square to Mercury and square to the moon, I think is a reminder that don't pay attention to everything. You've got an ideal, you've got a dream, you've got something that may be more important for you that involves maybe being less available or less attentive to peripheral people and issues.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
And thanks all
Thank
of you.
you all for coming. Thank you so much. We'll try to do a little earlier next month so you get your money's worth.
That's right. We will be here on the first Wednesday of the month, which is August.
And this will all be posted on YouTube by sometime tomorrow morning. So thank you, Soulfood. Thank you, baristas. Thank you, Julie, for your video work. And see you next
And
time.
thanks, Kevin, for giving us sound and light.
Yes. Let there be
Let there be sound and light. All right. Thanks.